Hey, good evening, folks. It's Tim O here, and it's Father's Day. It's actually Father's Evening right now, and I hope you all had a good one. I had a really nice day, I have to admit. My girl Carol, my son Tim, our little granddaughter Skylar, and his girlfriend Carrie Ann, we all went up to Hampton Beach. First, Skylar stayed over the house last night. We went out to this bouncing park called Carabunga and had a nice time out there. She was jumping all over the place and making friends, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. And we went out to eat last night. The food was okay. $120. I could have spent it on maybe getting some takeout and bringing it home, but you live and learn. And then, like I said, we got up this morning. We got a bunch of stuff done, and then we trucked on up to Hampton Beach. And he came. Him and his girl worked last night. That's why we mined Skylar. And they came up afterwards, and it was a smooth ride up there. Not much traffic at all. In fact, there was really none. We got up there pretty quick. Got a nice parking space. $20 to park. That's nothing. Later on in the day, it started to go up. It wasn't a scorcher of a day, thank God. It was in the 70s, and we tried to pitch a tent on the beach to block out the sun because I've had cancer now and I can't be sitting in the sun like I used to all my life. But it was a wind, and the tent just didn't make it. So we just finally said the hell with this and put the thing down and just settled in. And the sun was in and out, so it wasn't a bad time. And when I was up there today, I thought of my father, because my father, when we were young, used to get us a cottage up there. And he would work all week, and then he'd come up on the weekends, and we'd go fishing, and we'd go crabbing. And it was just really a nice time to be up there. It was the club casino. My brother Joe worked in the poker parlor, and we just used to have a blast. Fishing off the Hampton Beach Bridge, walking on the jetty, catching crabs with my mother, seeing my sisters bring her friends up there, or my brother bring his friend Paul Brooks up there, and my sister with Mary Mahoney, and we used to just have a really good time, it was like that little vacation. Like, we never went away to Floridas and Californias and all that, but that was like our little vacation. And today, my father's been gone since 1983, and I know he loved it up there, and he loved that he could get it for us, for his family, that we could stay up there. And so I felt him today in the air around me. I felt his spirit within my heart. And my son got to spend the day with me, which is really good. It was fun. We all took pictures. There was sand sculptures up there. Just a good time. Little rain came in near the end, but it wasn't bad. Just sprinkled for a little bit. A couple of thunder cracks that scared the hell out of little Skylar, but it was all right. And it's just it's those times. My father left this world. When I was young, I was like 17 years old, and I think about all the times we could have had. It was back in 1983. And I think about all the times that I would have liked to have spent with him, to have gotten to know him better. If maybe he put down the drink and sobered up like myself, we could have both been on, the boats, we were on one path our whole lives, and it would have been good to take off on another path. I know that is for me, but it didn't happen with him. But he was a strong guy, and he was brave as a son of a bitch, and he did protect his family. He provided for his family. He would work 2-3 jobs at times, and I still feel his heart. I still hear his laughter. It's been so long since I've seen him, but when I see pictures of him and he's giving me a hug, or he's, had me on his shoulders, and my brother Joe too, just makes my day when I see that stuff. Because, like I said, it's been so long. It's almost like it's been so long you almost forget, you know. And I used to love just, he'd walk us to church, and hanging on to his big arm, and just made you feel safe. Made me feel safe. As a kid, I used to look up to him, and he was like everything to me. And he had a problem, like I ended up having a problem later on in my life, and so did my brother Joe. But like I said, he was a good man, and I miss his laugh, and I miss his smile. And when I see him in those pictures, sometimes I get a little bit sappy there, and I miss him. I really do. I miss him a lot. He was my dad. Plain and simple. And the time that I did spend with him was very worthwhile. I used to go down and meet him down there at Charlie's, and he'd sit me up in the bar stool, and I'd get myself a big pancake and a Coke or a milk, and he'd throw me a few bucks, and that always made me feel good. And I'd run over and buy the latest album or something with it, or when I got older, and he'd throw me a few bucks, that would be like the money for a few beers that night and hanging out at the projects, but we had some fun, and there was some fun times, and those are the times I want to remember, and that's what I'm trying to do for my son. I'm his dad, and I got a second chance at being a dad for him. I was always I never hurt him physically, but I hurt him mentally, because I know, because I watched what alcoholism did to me as a young kid, and I know it affected my son. But now me and him are like this. I'm a power of example to him, and he is a power of example to me, because he didn't follow in that path. Yeah, he has a couple of beers, but you know what? I don't see no problem with it. I don't see no addictive behaviors. So I thank God for that. But today was a very special day. It was nice to be up there. We got lobster, steamers, clams, fried clams. We had steak tips. That table was full of food. We walked around. I got myself an Alice Cooper shirt from when he played up at the club casino. It was just one I never seen, so I'm like, I gotta pick that up. Actually, Carol got it for me for Father's Day, and I got this album, which I'm going to be, I've had this album in a couple of forms, but this is the 180-gram vinyl pressing of the Band of Gypsies, and I got this from Carol, and also I got Exile on Main Street from the Stones, so I'm going to do a couple of videos on those two albums and what they meant to me growing up, and what that music still means to me now. So I love being a dad. I love that I'm a sober person now, and I'm not all lived up, hooked up in chaos. And I hope yous all had a happy Father's Day. And if your fathers are here, I hope you got to spend some time with them. And if they're already gone, I hope you always keep them in your heart, because our fathers are dear. Sometimes we get a bad rap, but I miss my father. And I lost him at a pivotal time in my life, because I was just in that 17, 18-year-old thing, and I was already kind of testing the waters with a lot of stuff. And maybe, I don't know what would have happened. I don't want to look too far into it. Things happen. But I just kind of wish he was with me, for more of my life. Because I think I might have went a different path. But I don't really know that, So, dear old Dad, I miss you. And I felt your spirit up there today in that thunder crack. And when I looked out over the water and seen the old bandstand and things that are still there, they're different, they're new and improved. but a lot of the stuff is still there. I took a little walk for myself to get out of the sun for a while and just, just walking with people and checking out the rock and roll stores because I'm a musical nut and I always been. And, nobody ever filled that void that you left. Time goes by, but my heart never went out to another man. My mother had one boyfriend named Leon, and that was just because she needed somebody. But she loved my father. My father was a good man. Unfortunately, he had a bad problem, and in the end, it got kind of ugly. But I always remember those good times, because those good times are what get me through when these days like Father's Day come around or Christmas or whatever. Both my parents are gone. My brother Joe's gone. It's me and my two sisters now. But, to be able to, I lived long enough to see my son grow into a good man. And I lived long enough to see my little granddaughter now growing up and to be a little teenager pretty soon. Got to see that stuff. If I kept going on the way I was going, I would have missed that. I would have been the guy that died up in the 4th floor of Clarendon Hill. And that would have been such a waste, So anyways, I hope he's all had a good day. And if you spent it alone, and, I talked to guys today that what we did in life with alcohol and drugs, sometimes people don't forget. And sometimes people don't forgive. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to have my son in my life. I'm very lucky to have a wonderful woman like Carol. I'm a very lucky guy, because I talked to guys today that, today's a sad day, because either their kids don't talk to them, or they just, they miss their fathers. And I miss mine too. But you know what? I'm glad that I get to spend the time with my family. And now we're home, we're chilling, and we're gonna have a peaceful evening, and then it's right back to the norm tomorrow. So listen, happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. Happy Father's Day to the ones that are gone and the ones that are still here. And may this upcoming week be a good one for you. And if you could please subscribe to my channel, or at least give it a like. And if anybody could, if they need to, hear that things do get better. Things do change. Sometimes it takes time. Not our time, because we want it on our time. Just takes time. It's not all about us. If we hurt people, then we might have to wait it out a little while. And some people might have to wait out forever. But the thing about that is, usually the people that don't forgive, life's too short. Life's too short to hate somebody or to resent them for who they are. Not all of us were saints. But you know what? We turned our lives around, and that should be looked at. It should be looked at more than maybe the shit that we did. So enjoy your evening, folks, and have a great week ahead. This is Timo, signing off. Take care.